He wasn't supposed to survive. The icy wind howled through the trees, but there was no one there to hear it. Jack Thompson, a Marine once full of life and purpose, now lay motionless in his wheelchair, surrounded by a cold silence that had been his constant companion ever since he left the battlefield. His body had been broken, his legs gone, and his heart, well, it felt like it had been left behind on the other side of the world. But today, everything was about to change. Jack's eyes flickered open, scanning the room. There was a photo of a dog on the table, his loyal companion, Rex. Rex, the German shepherd who had been with him through every mission, every battle. The dog he hadn't seen in 5 years. The dog he thought he had lost forever. Jack had never been one for hope after the war, but today, it was different. He had heard the stories. He had heard the whispers that Rex had been seen alive, but he refused to believe it. His mind couldn't handle the thought of hope, only loss. The thought that his dog was still out there, waiting for him, seemed like an impossible dream. Yet, as Jack sat in his room, a soft knock came at the door. A voice, faint but clear, called out, "Sir, there's someone here to see you." Jack's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? His hands shook as he wheeled his chair towards the door. He opened it slowly, half expecting to see someone from his past, maybe a fellow Marine, maybe a volunteer. But as the door creaked open, he wasn't prepared for what he saw. Standing in the doorway, staring at him with those familiar amber eyes, was Rex. The dog he thought he would never see again. Rex's tail wagged slowly, his gaze locked with Jack's. There was no mistaking it. This was his dog. After all these years, after everything they had been through, Rex had found him. Jack could hardly believe it. He reached out a hand, his heart pounding in his chest. Rex stepped forward, nuzzling Jack's hand with a soft whine. The sound was the same as it had been all those years ago. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He pulled Rex into a tight hug, the weight of the past 5 years crashing down on him. The years of separation, the years of grief, the years of wondering. They were gone. Rex was back. And in that moment, Jack realized something. Loyalty, real loyalty, never fades. It doesn't matter how much time passes or how much distance there is between you. It doesn't matter what you've lost. What matters is that, in the end, you never really leave each other. Rex was back. And Jack was whole again. As Jack sat in his wheelchair, holding Rex close, the weight of the years began to lift. The warmth of his loyal companion, the dog who had always been by his side, was a comfort he hadn't realized he missed so much. Jack stroked Rex's fur, the same familiar feel, and for the first time in 5 years, he allowed himself to smile. Rex, ever the vigilant guardian, rested his head gently on Jack's lap, his eyes never leaving Jack's face, as if he understood the magnitude of this moment. Outside, the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the small house. The silence between Jack and Rex was not empty. It was filled with everything unspoken, all the memories of their shared past. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, letting the quiet surround him, the hum of the world outside drifting away. He could feel the gentle pressure of Rex's presence, grounding him, as it always had. But as Jack opened his eyes again, the reality of their reunion started to sink in. This wasn't just about the return of a dog, it was about healing. It was about reclaiming something that had been lost, a sense of purpose, a bond that had survived through time and hardship. For Jack, this reunion was more than just a personal victory. It was a reminder of the strength he had within him, the strength he had forgotten after years of battling the demons of war and loss. Rex had always been more than just a dog to him. He was a reminder that no matter how tough life got, loyalty, love, and companionship could always bring you back. Jack took a deep breath, his mind racing with the memories of the times they had shared, the battles, the victories, and the sacrifices. It had all led to this moment, a moment of peace. But as the night settled in, a thought crossed Jack's mind. How had Rex found him? After all these years, after the miles and the distance, how had Rex managed to track him down? The question lingered in his mind, but for now, Jack decided it didn't matter. What mattered was that Rex was here, and Jack wasn't alone anymore. The world outside may have been full of chaos, but here, in this small house, Jack found something that war could never take away, home. He looked down at Rex, his loyal companion, and felt a sense of gratitude wash over him. This was the beginning of a new chapter. Together, They would face whatever the future held. For Jack, the journey ahead didn't seem so daunting anymore. He was no longer just a Marine. He was a man who had rediscovered the greatest gift of all, unconditional love and loyalty. The days that followed felt like a dream to Jack. It was as though the world had slowed down, giving him a chance to breathe, to really live again. He and Rex settled into a new routine, one that felt comforting and familiar. Every morning, Jack would wake up to the sound of Rex's tail thumping against the floor, excited to start the day. Jack had never realized how much he had missed the simple joys of life, like the warmth of a dog's presence beside him, the comfort of knowing that no matter what, he wasn't alone. Rex had not just returned as a dog, he had returned as a lifeline. Jack would wheel his chair into the kitchen, and Rex would trot beside him, always there, never far from Jack's side. At night, they would sit together, watching the sun set over the horizon. Rex would rest his head on Jack's lap, content and peaceful. There were moments, fleeting moments, when Jack forgot the weight of his past, the pain of war, the scars left on his body and soul. Those moments with Rex were healing in a way Jack hadn't expected. As the days turned into weeks, Jack found himself reconnecting with the world. He started taking walks outside, slowly at first, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. With Rex by his side, he felt more confident. The once overwhelming task of facing the world felt manageable again. One afternoon, Jack received a letter. It was an invitation to a veterans gathering, a reunion for soldiers who had served in the same unit. Jack hesitated. The thought of facing old memories, old faces, stirred something deep inside him. But Rex seemed to sense his hesitation. The dog looked up at Jack, his amber eyes steady and unwavering. It was as if Rex was silently telling him, "You're not alone." With a deep breath, Jack decided to go. The night before the reunion, he found himself standing at the window, watching the stars. Rex was by his side, as always, his body pressed gently against Jack's. In that moment, Jack realized something important. Rex had given him more than just companionship. He had given him the courage to face the world again. The next day, Jack and Rex made their way to the gathering. When Jack arrived, he was met with familiar faces. His old comrades, many of whom had seen the same horrors Jack had, were there. Some had injuries, some had scars, but all of them had the same quiet strength. The reunion was filled with laughter, stories, and memories. Jack realized that, despite the years and the distance, the bond between him and his brothers in arms had never truly broken. Rex, ever faithful, stayed close by Jack's side, a silent reminder of the loyalty that had brought them back together. As the day came to a close, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The past had shaped him, but it no longer defined him. With Rex by his side, Jack had found a new purpose. The journey of healing, of rediscovering joy, had only just begun. The weeks continued to pass, and Jack found himself in a new rhythm. The initial rush of the reunion faded into a comforting routine of quiet mornings and evenings spent with Rex by his side. The world outside remained as it always had been, but Jack no longer felt like he was fighting it. Rex had brought him peace in ways he hadn't thought possible. There were days when Jack would sit in his chair, Rex lying nearby, and for the first time in a long time, he would just breathe. He realized how much he had taken for granted, the simplicity of sitting in the sun, the comfort of a quiet home, the feeling of being safe. Rex had given him back something that had been lost long ago, a sense of belonging. Jack still struggled with moments of doubt, especially at night when memories would surface, creeping in like shadows. But even then, Rex was there, his steady presence a constant reminder that Jack didn't have to face the darkness alone. It was one of those nights when Jack woke up to the sound of rain tapping gently against the window. He couldn't sleep, and the memories were too loud in his mind. He reached down to where Rex slept at the foot of his bed. The dog stirred, sensing Jack's unease, and crawled up beside him, laying his head on Jack's lap. The warmth of Rex's body was a comfort, and Jack gently ran his fingers through the dog's fur. He felt the tension in his chest slowly start to ease. The storm outside raged on, but in that moment, Jack felt as if he were in the eye of it, calm and safe. As the night wore on, Jack thought about the future. He thought about all the things he had yet to do, the places he still wanted to see, the life he had been given another chance at. With Rex at his side, He no longer saw those things as impossible. They were just steps in the journey. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light across the living room. Jack smiled as he watched Rex, ever the playful companion, chase his tail, full of energy and joy. Jack's heart swelled. This was the gift he had received, the gift of second chances. He couldn't go back to who he was before, but maybe, just maybe, he didn't need to. What mattered was what came next, the path forward with Rex, side by side. Together, they would find new adventures, new moments of joy, and new ways to heal. Jack knew the road ahead would not always be easy, but with Rex beside him, he was ready. The loyalty and love between them had created something stronger than any challenge life could throw their way. They had already survived the hardest battles together. Whatever came next, they would face it as they always had, together. It was a crisp morning when Jack decided it was time to take a step forward. Rex had been his constant companion, always by his side, and the bond between them had grown stronger with each passing day. But Jack knew it was time for something more. He needed to give back, to share the healing that Rex had given him. With Rex by his side, Jack felt like he could conquer the world, or at least try. He had started volunteering at a local animal shelter, helping out with the dogs that reminded him so much of Rex. It wasn't much, just walking the dogs, giving them the attention and care they deserved, but it felt right. Every day at the shelter, Jack would be greeted by wagging tails and eager eyes, just like Rex had greeted him all those years ago. The love and loyalty from the dogs were overwhelming, and it made Jack feel like he was truly making a difference. As the weeks went on, Jack found himself connecting with the other volunteers, people who shared his passion for animals. They would talk about their own stories, their own experiences with loss, healing, and the power of companionship. Jack shared his story too, but only with those he trusted. It felt good to talk about Rex, to tell others how a dog had helped him find his way back to life. But there was still something deep inside him that hadn't healed completely. The memories, the nightmares, still visited him from time to time. The guilt of not being able to save everyone, the weight of those he had lost, lingered. Yet, with Rex by his side, Jack was learning how to deal with it, how to live with the past without letting it control him. One afternoon, Jack was sitting in the park with Rex, watching the sun set. The world around them was peaceful, the kind of peace Jack hadn't felt in years. He could hear the distant laughter of children playing, the rustle of the leaves in the trees. It was moments like these that made Jack realize how much he had been missing all these years. He had been so focused on the pain, on the loss, that he had forgotten how to live. But with Rex, he was learning again. He was learning to appreciate the simple things, the sound of the wind in the trees, the warmth of the sun on his face, the feeling of Rex's head resting on his lap. It was the kind of peace Jack had always longed for, the kind of peace he thought he had lost forever. And as the sky turned, a deep shade of orange, Jack felt a sense of gratitude wash over him. He wasn't the same man who had come home from the war. He had changed. He had been broken, but now he was whole again. With Rex by his side, Jack knew he could face whatever came next. Life had a way of throwing curveballs, but with the loyalty and love of a dog, there was nothing Jack couldn't handle. As the months passed, Jack and Rex continued to find solace in each other's company. Their routine had become a comforting rhythm. Jack spent his days at the shelter, helping the animals, and his nights with Rex, reflecting on how far they had come. He knew deep down that the journey of healing wasn't linear. Some days were easier than others, but with Rex, the days felt more manageable. One morning, Jack woke up early, the light just beginning to spill into the room. Rex was already awake, his amber eyes watching Jack with quiet affection. It was moments like these that reminded Jack of the depth of their bond. They had both been through so much, and yet, here they were, alive, together, and finding peace. Jack thought about his life before the war, before the pain. He thought about the man he used to be, before he had lost himself in the chaos of battle. But now, with Rex, he had a chance to start over. He wasn't sure where the future would take him, but he knew one thing for certain. Rex would be by his side. The thought brought a small smile to Jack's face. They were a team, and together, they could face anything. That afternoon, Jack decided to visit the place where it all began, the military base where he and Rex had first met. It was a place filled with memories, both good and bad. As Jack drove there, Rex sat quietly in the passenger seat, his presence a calming force. The roads were familiar, the trees and fields outside the window seeming to whisper their own stories of the past. When they arrived at the base, Jack felt a mixture of emotions. The place looked the same, but everything felt different now. He was no longer the man he had been when he left. He had been broken, but he was healing, and it was all thanks to Rex. Jack wheeled his chair to the old training grounds where he and Rex had spent countless hours together. He could still remember the first time he had seen Rex, the way the dog had looked at him with those intelligent, understanding eyes. It had been the beginning of something special, something that would last a lifetime. As Jack sat there, surrounded by the echoes of the past, Rex lay at his feet, his head resting on Jack's lap. In that moment, Jack realized that the past, with all its pain and loss, no longer controlled him. It was a part of him, yes, but it didn't define him. He had Rex, and together, they had created a new future. The sun was setting, casting a soft glow over the field, and for the first time in a long time, Jack felt a deep sense of peace. The journey wasn't over, but with Rex at his side, Jack knew he could face whatever came next. They had already survived the hardest part, together. It had been a few months since Jack had revisited the military base with Rex, and life had continued to settle into a gentle rhythm. The weight of the past no longer felt like an anchor, but more like a distant memory, one that Jack was learning to live with, not forget. With Rex, every day felt like an opportunity to embrace life again. Jack had started to volunteer more, not just at the shelter, but at local community events, speaking about the importance of second chances. His story, and Rex's, had become a beacon for others who were struggling to find their way. The bond they shared became more than just a personal triumph. It was a story of healing, of rebuilding after loss. One afternoon, while Jack was at the park, he noticed a group of children watching him and Rex. They were giggling, pointing at Rex as the dog performed his usual tricks, fetching the ball, rolling over, and wagging his tail enthusiastically. Jack couldn't help but smile. He had never imagined that one day, Rex would not only be his constant companion, but also a symbol of hope for others. A little girl walked up to Jack, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is that your dog?" she asked. Jack nodded, his chest swelling with pride. "Yes, that's Rex. He's my best friend." The little girl looked up at him, her face serious for a moment. "I want a dog like him," she said. Jack chuckled softly. "Rex is special, but all dogs can be good friends if you treat them with love." The girl smiled, then ran off to join her friends, leaving Jack with a feeling of warmth he hadn't expected. It was moments like this that reminded him how far he had come. He no longer saw himself as broken or lost. He saw himself as someone who had been given a second chance, just like Rex. The world had changed around him, but with Rex at his side, Jack felt like he could face whatever came next. The following weekend, Jack and Rex were invited to a local school to participate in a community event. Jack had never thought of himself as someone who could inspire others, but now, with Rex by his side, he was beginning to understand the power of their story. As he stood in front of a crowd of young students, talking about loyalty, second chances, and the bond between a man and his dog, Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He was no longer just the man who had survived the war. He was the man who had found peace, love, and friendship in the most unexpected of places, through the eyes of a dog. Rex stood beside him, calm and composed, his presence a quiet reminder of the strength they had together. Jack looked down at him, grateful for everything the dog had given him. "This is Rex," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "And he saved me, not just on the battlefield, but in life." As the children clapped, Jack realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where he would no longer be defined by the past, but by the future he was creating with Rex. The future was bright, and it was theirs to share, side by side. As the days turned into months, Jack's life had shifted in ways he never could have predicted. He was no longer the man who woke up with a heaviness in his heart, haunted by memories of the battlefield. Instead, he was a man finding joy in the simple things. An early morning walk with Rex, a quiet evening spent reading a book, or the laughter of children as they played in the park. Jack had come a long way, and Rex had been there every step of the journey. The bond they shared had only grown stronger with time. It was a connection that went beyond words, a bond that spoke to something deeper. One evening, as Jack and Rex sat on the porch, watching the sunset together, Jack reflected on how far they had come. The past seemed like a distant memory now, one he no longer felt weighed down by. Rex's presence had been the anchor Jack needed to find his way back to life. Without the dog, he wasn't sure where he would have ended up. There was still pain, of course. Jack had learned that healing wasn't a destination, but a journey. Some days were harder than others, but Rex was always there, unwavering in his loyalty. That was something Jack had come to cherish. The simple, quiet loyalty of a dog who had seen him at his worst and never once turned away. The world outside may have changed, but Jack had found a sense of peace he had longed for. One day, Jack received a letter from a local veterans organization, inviting him to speak at an event for returning soldiers. Jack was hesitant at first. Public speaking wasn't something he had ever imagined himself doing. But as he read through the letter, he realized this was another step forward. He had a story to tell, and if sharing it could help others, then it was worth it. Rex had been with him through it all, through the darkest moments and the brightest days, and now, it seemed, he was about to help Jack give something back. The night of the event, Jack arrived at the venue, his nerves beginning to build. He had never been comfortable in the spotlight, but tonight was different. He had Rex with him, and that made all the difference. When his turn came to speak, Jack stood in front of the crowd, Rex at his side. He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of Rex's body beside him, and began to speak. He shared his story, the story of his time in the military, the struggles he had faced, and how Rex had been the one constant in his life. Jack spoke of the loyalty and love that had kept him going, of the moments when Rex had saved him, not just on the battlefield, but in life. As he spoke, Jack felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just talking about the past anymore. He was sharing the lessons he had learned, the strength he had found, and the hope that came from second chances. The audience listened intently, many of them moved by his words. As Jack finished his speech, the crowd applauded, and Jack felt a sense of pride he hadn't known in years. It wasn't just about the applause. It was about the fact that he had finally found a way to share his story, to show others that healing was possible, even after the hardest of battles. Jack and Rex had become a symbol of hope, of resilience, and of the power of unconditional love. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The journey was far from over, but with Rex by his side, Jack knew they could face whatever came next. As the seasons changed, so did Jack's sense of purpose. He had once felt like a man lost in a world that no longer made sense, a man haunted by memories that he couldn't escape. But now, with Rex by his side, he had started to rebuild not just his life, but the life of others as well. The more he shared his story, the more Jack realized how much healing there was still to do. But this time, it wasn't just about him. It was about helping others who were fighting battles of their own. Jack had started working with local veterans groups, sharing his experiences and offering a shoulder to lean on. Rex had become a symbol of hope for so many, proof that even after the darkest times, there could still be light. One afternoon, Jack received a call that would change everything. A local animal rescue organization had reached out to him with a request. They had rescued a dog from an abusive situation, and they thought he and Rex could help. At first, Jack wasn't sure what to expect. He had always been a bit wary of getting too close to other animals, afraid that it might be too painful to open his heart again. But when he met the dog, a young German shepherd with wide, fearful eyes, he knew it was the right decision. The dog's name was Max, and he had been through more than any animal should ever have to endure. But as Jack knelt down to meet him, he saw the same spark of hope he had once seen in Rex's eyes. Jack and Rex spent the next few weeks helping Max adjust to his new life. It wasn't easy. Max was shy and hesitant, afraid of trusting anyone. But Jack was patient, just as Rex had been with him. Each day, they worked together, showing Max that not all humans were to be feared, that there was still kindness in the world. As Max began to trust Jack and Rex, something unexpected happened. Jack realized that by helping Max, he was helping himself too. The more he gave, the more he healed. The journey of healing was never meant to be taken alone, and by bringing Max into their lives, Jack and Rex had found a new purpose. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were warriors of hope, bringing light to others who were struggling to find their way out of the darkness. One evening, as Jack sat with Rex and Max on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he felt a deep sense of contentment. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, Jack didn't feel like he was walking it alone. With Rex at his side and Max by his feet, Jack knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. The bond between man and dog was something extraordinary, something that could heal even the deepest wounds. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jack smiled, knowing that he had found his way back to the light, with Rex and Max leading the way. As time continued to pass, Jack and Rex, along with Max, had formed a family, a bond stronger than any war or loss they had endured. It was a new chapter, one that Jack never thought possible. The days were filled with simple joys, long walks with Max, moments of quiet reflection on the porch with Rex, and a growing sense of belonging. Jack had become more involved in his community, volunteering at the local shelter and speaking to veterans about finding strength through unexpected places. His story, and Rex's, had inspired many. They had shown that even after the most challenging battles, it was possible to heal. But there were still hard days. Jack would often find himself alone with his thoughts, memories of the past surfacing uninvited. It wasn't always easy to push those thoughts away, but with Rex by his side, he was learning how to manage them. Max, ever the playful dog, was his constant reminder of the importance of patience and trust. Max had come so far since his rescue, and every little milestone, whether it was learning to trust Jack or simply feeling safe in his presence, was a victory. Jack knew that healing wasn't just a personal journey, it was a shared experience, one that would take time. It was on one of those quiet mornings, with the sunlight gently filtering through the curtains, that Jack made a decision. He would write a book, not just about his time in the military or his experiences with Rex, but about the power of loyalty, love, and second chances. The idea had been brewing for a while, but now, with Rex and Max at his side, Jack felt like he had something important to share. He wanted others to know that no matter how broken they felt, no matter how lost, they could still find their way back. Rex had shown him that, and now he would share that message with the world. Jack began writing every day, pouring his heart into the pages. He wrote about the pain of war, the sense of loss, and the difficult road to recovery. But he also wrote about the joy of finding hope in the most unexpected places, like in the eyes of a dog. As he wrote, Jack realized that he was not only sharing his story, but he was also healing in a way he had never expected. Writing allowed him to confront the past, to process the emotions he had buried for so long. It wasn't easy, but with each word, he felt a little lighter. Rex would sit by his side while he wrote, his head resting on Jack's knee, as if reminding him that he wasn't alone in this journey. The more Jack wrote, the more he realized how much Rex had been a part of his healing, and how much their bond had shaped the person he had become. The book was Jack's way of paying it forward, of sharing the gift Rex had given him. He knew the journey wasn't over, but he was ready for whatever came next. With Rex and Max by his side, Jack felt a sense of peace, something he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer defined by his past, but by the love and loyalty that had brought him back to life. Together, they had faced the darkest moments and emerged stronger, ready to face the future with hope and gratitude. As Jack continued to pour his heart into the book, he realized just how much this journey had shaped him. What had begun as an effort to heal had transformed into something more, a mission to share the power of love, loyalty, and second chances with others. His story, the story of Rex and Max, had become a beacon of hope for those who felt broken, for those who had been through their own struggles and were trying to find a way forward. Jack's life had changed, but so had the lives of those he met along the way. He began receiving letters from veterans, from people struggling with their own battles, telling him how his words had inspired them to keep going. Jack had always believed that the bond between a man and his dog was something special, but he never expected it to reach so many. It was the stories of others, of how Rex had helped Jack find peace, that truly humbled him. One afternoon, after finishing another chapter of his book, Jack sat on the porch with Rex and Max. The three of them had become inseparable. As Jack sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened, he realized how much he had grown. He had gone from a man who thought he had lost everything to someone who had found the greatest gifts in life: hope, companionship, and purpose. The journey hadn't been easy, and it hadn't been quick, but it had been worth every step. Jack thought about the future, about the next chapter in his life. He knew he would continue writing, sharing his story with anyone who needed to hear it. But he also knew that the journey didn't stop there. There were still so many people who needed help, so many lives that needed to be touched by the same love that Rex had given him. The bond between Jack, Rex, and Max had become a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Jack's healing had come not just from Rex's presence, but from the understanding that love and loyalty could rebuild even the most broken hearts. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Jack smiled. He was no longer the man who had come back from the war, haunted by the past. He was a man who had found peace, who had rediscovered the joy of living, and who was ready to face whatever came next. With Rex and Max by his side, he felt ready for anything. The future was wide open, full of endless possibilities. Together, they would continue to heal, continue to share their story, and continue to inspire others to believe that no matter how dark the night, there was always hope for a brighter tomorrow. Jack sat quietly at his desk, the soft clicking of the keys filling the room as he finished the final draft of his book. He had spent countless hours writing, revising, and reliving every moment, every emotion. Rex lay at his feet, as he always did, a comforting presence in the midst of the words. The bond between them had become more than just a story. It had become a journey of healing, one that had taken Jack from the darkest corners of his mind to a place of peace he never thought possible. Now, as Jack looked at the finished pages, he felt a sense of accomplishment, not because the book was complete, but because the story had helped him find the courage to heal and move forward. It wasn't just his story anymore. It was a story for anyone who had ever felt lost, for anyone who needed to know that there was always hope. As Jack looked down at Rex, he couldn't help but smile. The dog had been there through it all, the constant companion who never wavered, never left. Rex had been his anchor, his guide through the storm. Max, too, had become an integral part of their family. The two dogs were different in many ways. Rex, steady and loyal, and Max, still finding his place in the world. But together, they had become a team, one that Jack could always rely on. That evening, as the last light of the day faded into the twilight, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He thought about the future, about what was next for him and his two loyal companions. There were still so many stories to be told, so many lives to touch. Jack knew that the journey wasn't over, but he was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. He had Rex, and he had Max together. They had already overcome the most difficult of battles. They had found peace in each other's company, and they had learned to embrace life, even after everything they had been through. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Jack leaned back in his chair, Rex's head resting on his lap, and Max lying peacefully beside them. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt complete. He wasn't just a man who had survived. He was a man who had found a new purpose, one that was built on the foundation of love, loyalty, and second chances. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with Rex and Max by his side, Jack knew he was ready for whatever came next. They had already survived the hardest parts together. Now, they would face the future, hand in paw, with hope in their hearts and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. It had been over a year since Jack first sat down to write his book, and in that time, so much had changed. The journey of healing had never been a straight path, but with each passing day, Jack grew stronger, more certain of his place in the world. He had shared his story, poured his heart into the pages, and in doing so, had found himself surrounded by a community of people who understood, who connected with his journey. Rex, his loyal companion, remained by his side, a constant source of comfort and strength. Max, too, had grown into his role, no longer the fearful dog he once was, but a joyful, playful soul who had found his own place in Jack's life. Together, they had created a family that was built not on blood, but on love, loyalty, and second chances. Jack now spent his days helping others, working with veterans and animal shelters, sharing the lessons he had learned along the way. He wasn't just helping others heal, he was healing himself as well. Each day, he was reminded of how far he had come, of the pain he had faced and overcome, and of the love that had carried him through it all. But even with everything that had changed, Jack knew there would always be more to learn. The journey of healing wasn't something that could be completed, it was ongoing. And with Rex and Max by his side, Jack was ready for whatever came next. The future, for the first time in a long time, no longer felt like something to fear. It was something to embrace. Jack had found his way back to life, not through the past, but through the future, through the promise of love, of loyalty, and of new beginnings. As the sun set over the horizon, Jack looked down at Rex, his faithful companion, and then over at Max, his playful, loyal dog. Together, they had weathered the storms, and together, they would face whatever was to come. And for the first time, Jack knew that no matter what, he was not alone. He had his family, he had his purpose, and he had hope. And with that, he knew that anything was possible.